Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in to my super chat. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. I can't do these without you. To my super chat, you're so I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you, Odin. Thank you so very much for starting it off even before the live stream started. Ladies and gentlemen, JG, hello, everybody here. Hello, Eric, H526, Luke St. Martin. Some really terrible news, if you ask me. This is something, of course, that President Trump wouldn't have done, but Mashed Potato Brains is doing. This is exactly why I voted. This is exactly why I voted for Trump. This is exactly why I voted for President Trump. Exactly why I voted for President Trump over Mashed Potato Brains. Okay? This is exactly why. I want to read you this right now. Now, this is like a Lincoln Project, completely counterproductive, borderline irrational, considering we had an understanding that mutually assured destruction would take place if we ever tried to counter the USSR or Russia militarily. And now you have a man who voted for every debacle pushed in an administration. President Obama destroyed a country with a NATO intervention in Libya. You have Biden voting for Iraq and Afghanistan, and Trump reversed U.S. foreign policy. The Doha Agreement was Trump's. Biden completely botched that. We were supposed to get out May 1st, 2021. He completely botched that. And this is exactly why I voted for President Trump. Biden has never had a foreign policy success in his entire career. What did he ever do that's noteworthy? I'm sure he did noteworthy things, but what did he do that people remember in 40 years in government? 30 plus 40 years in government. What did he do? I want to know what foreign policy. Libya was a catastrophe. He sided with the Bush administration. The Doha Agreement was one of the worst days in U.S. history. A lot worse than that fateful day in January, which I also was, against. It was terrible, horrible, but not as atrocious as 169 Afghans losing their lives and 13 Americans losing their lives in Afghanistan because Biden decided to keep us there and ignore the actual timeline. The timeline called for a May 1st withdrawal. Now you have Biden ways deploying thousands of troops to Eastern Europe. What is that going to do? The president is also considering deploying warships and aircraft to NATO allies. It would be a major shift from its restrained stance. What would that do? Do you think Putin cares? He has nuclear weapons. What does he care? Who cares about? They're not going to invade any other country. They're not going to invade Poland. They're not going to invade France. They're not going to invade they can't invade the UK. So what is he, this isn't like, what does Biden think he's doing? The Cold War is over. And Democrats started a new Cold War because they lost to Trump. So you have a situation where this is exactly why when people say, oh, well, I don't know why anyone would vote for Trump. This is exactly why 73 million Americans voted for Trump. Because he would not have even considered sending thousands of U.S. troops after 20 years of never-ending counterinsurgency wars pushed by the Lincoln Project people and Bill Kristol and Joe Biden and Kerry and Madam Secretary and all of the good liberal Democrats who care so much about climate change. They will ensure with all their might that coal, natural gas, and oil are at all-time highs, and you better believe oil is going to go over $100 per barrel when this happens. He not only, okay, you have to show force if your force means something. If your show of force is not public relations. That's what he told the leader of Afghanistan right before the country collapsed. Well, people are talking. People are talking, and, people are talking, and they think that you're not confident. And then he was told by Ghani that, yeah, we're about to get overrun. We need help. The help he should have given was simply to abide by the timeline that the government and the Taliban and everybody there agreed upon. Anyway, Washington, President Biden is considering deploying several thousand U.S. troops, as well as warships and aircraft, to then watch China invade Taiwan. The market tank, the recession hit, because mashed potato brains is completely incompetent. And he is advised, or told, I should say, by bumbling Blinken and what's his name, the national security advisor, who was a lifelong Madam Secretary advisor. Okay. These people they fall upwards. They're complete failures. They're highly educated, morally superior liberals who never, ever got a major call right on anything. Ever, ever, ever. No Doha agreement, no Abraham Accords, no first president to step foot in North Korea. That was all Trump. That was all Trump. They never had an actual foreign policy achievement that they could fall back on. Never. None of these people had anything close to what Trump, what Trump has accomplished. And it's like, now you want Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor. Bendy! Don't forget that $1 trillion. Yes, Bendy. Bendy. That's right, Dale, it is. Sweet Serenity, hello. Bendy! It is a false flag. It is. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bendy, don't forget the $1 trillion coin. Unbelievable. And look, they were serious. They were probably 10 to 15, 20% of Democrats were serious. But here, President Biden is considering deploying several thousand U.S. troops, as well as warships and aircraft. Don't you think Putin has enough weaponry where he doesn't care? Or at least he has nuclear weapons, so here, let's just go ahead. Here. Nuclear weapons by country amount. Okay, so here. Well, they used to have a lot more. They have 6,225 nukes. Actually, they have more than us. They have more nukes than we do. Can you see this? Okay, here. Why do you think Putin cares? In a chess match between mashed potato brains Biden and Putin or Z, it would be like Einstein versus AOC, or the 85 Bears versus a junior high team. It would be like a semi-truck versus a Prius. Okay? This is like, do you think they care about Biden's our soldiers, God bless the veterans and the men and women and their families of the U.S. Armed Forces. I wrote in the Hill, the Huffington Post, Salon, the Roanoke Times, the Jerusalem Post, against counterinsurgency conflicts because it hurts the country. They hurt the country. They're unwinnable, and they are we ask our soldiers, the brave and heroic men and women of this country, in the U.S. Armed Forces and their families, to do the impossible. I wrote against that. That's one of the main reasons initially I voted for President Trump and became a supporter of President Trump. Trump is a lot smarter than Biden. Has a great deal more wisdom, knows more about foreign policy, and he wasn't in politics his whole life. Look, they have more nukes than we do. You think they care? Do you think they care? The U.S. has 5,550 nuclear warheads, and Russia has 6,255. And then the next is China with 350. And then les Français. And then the UK. And then Pakistan, India. Israel is unofficial, but Israel, and then North Korea. So do you think they care? This is why the man only cares about public relations. He only cares about public relations. Thank you, Mar. Thank you. He only cares about public relations. He doesn't care about anything else. Why would they care? Now we have U.S. Embassy, State Department orders diplomats' families to leave U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. State Department orders families of embassy staff to leave Ukraine. State Department reduces bumbling. Blinken bumbled again. This administration, this is by far the worst president of my lifetime. The worst president by far. People said Trump was the worst president of their lifetime. They only said that because they don't like his personality. Other than that, he was an excellent president. He was an excellent president. He's in terms of economics, in terms of foreign policy, very good. Very good. We had foreign policy achievements President Obama couldn't achieve, and we had an economy better than President Obama's. And the last year of Trump's presidency, he was basically overrun by media and unelected government officials that basically took control of, the future of the country. Ending economic activity, and this week will be a make or break week. Well, this week we'll find out, and I think it's going to tank all week. But we'll find out if the market is just going to hold off before we're seeing the crash already, like I predicted in October in the Federalist. Read my article in the pinned comment. But this week, they're probably going to invade this week. Earnings are probably not going to be, in terms of forecast for the future, the earnings will be fine. All of these companies, Tesla, IBM, they'll either meet or beat earnings, but the forecast is going to be terrible. And you have now complete chaos. There's no plan. So what does he do? He thinks that they care about NATO. They don't care about NATO. Okay, so here, President Biden is considering deploying several thousand U.S. troops as well as warships, aircraft to NATO allies in the Baltics and Eastern Europe, and expansion of American military involvement, and mounting fears of a Russian incursion into Ukraine. Well, why would he do this? Our military has been overstretched, and we've learned apparently nothing from 20 years of failed policies by the Lincoln Project and Biden and Kerry and Clinton and Democrats and never Trump Republicans who've failed miserably. Their track record is miserable. Absolutely, they failed miserably. Tell me an accomplishment. Tell me a foreign policy accomplishment by President Obama that rivals the Doha Agreement, because the Doha Agreement was botched by Biden. The actual agreement called for May 1st withdrawal. That would have been like a monumental paradigm changing achievement. And the withdrawal had stipulations like you can't commandeer all of our tanks and Humvees and weapons and all of that. The move would signal a major pivot for the Biden administration. Oh, and by the way, what's Biden going to do when China invades Taiwan? How about nothing? This is the equivalent of not doing anything except placing a tremendous burden upon the men and women and their families of the U.S. Armed Forces. What does he aim to achieve from this? How about nothing? There's nothing he can achieve from this. And exactly, doesn't the EU, like, they make a big deal if the UK wants to leave the EU? Oh, don't they have their own? I mean, you have NATO, yes, but don't they have their own militaries? They can't defend themselves. So, but as President Vladimir Putin has ramped up his threatening actions towards Ukraine, and talks between American and Russian officials have failed. By the way, those talks were about like yesterday. The talks were like yesterday. We've known of these tensions for years. I mean, years. The past year, it got worse. Everybody knew, from the T-ban to China to Russia, everyone knew once mashed potato brains was leading the country, they could pretty much do whatever they wanted to do, because he had no plan. His plan was just not being Trump. That was the only thing. That was the only thing. The only vision Democrats had for this country was not to be Trump. That's it. That's why they were so in on infrastructure. They never spoke about infrastructure a day in their lives. That was like Bernie Sanders and Trump's deal. And that wasn't even the biggest issue. Like, Trump didn't focus on that only. And climate change, I talked about it in the last segment. They single-handedly ensured that fossil fuels were at all-time highs. So it's like, so let's just listen to this. This is hilarious too, because you can see he doesn't know what he's doing at all. It's a complete catastrophe. But you know what? This is a horrible thing to think about. The only thing that will keep this man at bay, or keep this administration, like, I don't want people to lose money. I always say that. I always say that. I always say that. I don't want people to lose money. And I think it's going to be terrible. I don't want people to lose money. But the stock market crash is the only thing that will make Jake Sullivan and bumbling Blinken and mashed potato brains Biden think twice about sending more Americans into harm's way, into never-ending conflict. But listen to this man. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's like revered by everyone in media. If this was Trump, I mean, it would be like nonstop. Um, it would be nonstop, like, performance art. But listen to this. You said it was about this. American troops and nuclear weapons. All these softball questions. Oh, all of these things are taking place. You can't hear? Okay, you can't hear anything? Gosh, dang it. Okay, hold on one second. No sound? Okay. Um, what about now? Let me know. Is there an echo? Let me know if there's an echo.
You said to us about President Putin, I think the last thing he wants now is a Cold War. Now, since then, of course, you've seen him gather these troops, 100,000 troops around Ukraine. Your Secretary of State said today he thought he could invade it at any moment. You've seen the cyber attacks, and you've seen the demand that he have a sphere of influence in which you would withdraw all American troops and nuclear weapons from what used.
All right, so was there a problem with the sound there? Was that better? Okay, so hold on. Let me just fix this. I think I know what. I think I know what the problem is. Okay, so. Okay, so hold on one second.
Still in the Senate.
The answer is that I think he still does not want any full-blown war, number one. Number two, do I think he'll test the West, test the United States and NATO as significantly as he can? Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price for it that he doesn't think now will cost him what it's going to cost him. And I think he'll regret having done it. Now, whether or not I think.
So what did this man say? What did this man say? What does that mean? He didn't say anything. Was that better? Was that better? Could you hear that? There's a delay between my questions. And was that better? Could you hear him? Could you hear mashed potato brains, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. So what was he saying? All he said was, thank you, JG. I hope all is well. All he said was, Roosevelt, hello. All he said was, oh, you know what? They're going to test us. And I don't think he wants a full-scale confrontation. This is meaningless. It's a meaningless statement. Then why did you send American soldiers? What's the point of that? There's already NATO. We already have NATO. What's the point? I mean, what's the point? They have more nuclear weapons than we do. What's the point? What on earth is the point?
That how can I say this in a public forum? I think that he is dealing with.
He doesn't even know what he's saying. He's just trying to make something up. So he's no clue. He's no clue what's going on. He has absolutely no clue what's going on. He doesn't have any vision. Thank you, Eric. He doesn't have any vision of what's going on. He doesn't know what he's even saying. Paul, exactly. Thank you, Paul.
What I believe he thinks is the most tragic thing that's happened to Mother Russia, in that the Berlin Wall came down, the empire has been lost, the near abroad is gone, etc. The Soviet Union has been split.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. This wouldn't even be useful for some academic conference, you know, the Brookings Institution or some, this wouldn't even be interesting. We all know all of this. So again, it's always about Trump and what drives him and Putin and who he was a former KGB agent. Who cares? Putin playing chess with Biden is like it's like I said, it's like Einstein against AOC. It's like it's like they're why are these people 10 steps ahead of mashed potato brains and bumbling Blinken? Why? Why? And then he says he wants to send Americans to Europe. For what purpose? There isn't going to be a land war. They're not going to invade any NATO countries. That's the whole point. That's why he's going into Ukraine. That's why they're causing so much trouble in Ukraine, Putin. Because he doesn't want it to become part of NATO. That's the reason. God.
But think about what he has. He has 8 time zones, a burning tundra that will not freeze again naturally, a situation where he has a lot of oil and gas, but he is trying to find his place in the world between China and the West. And so I'm not so sure that he has David, I'm not so sure he has.
He doesn't know what he's saying, okay? He doesn't know what he's saying because he doesn't really care. He's probably like, look, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what he's saying. He has no clue. He has no clue. Like what he's going to do. Trump would have. He did. I mean, like they got Trump on allegedly. Even President Zelensky stated that Trump absolutely did not pressure him. And then, of course, Democrats, because they politicize everything, impeached Trump because Biden, of course, is corrupt, very corrupt. And the notion or the idea or the possibility that Trump would ask someone to investigate Biden, all they did was work with foreign intelligence officials to try to set up Trump. That's why they were in a bar in London and they got the Alexander Downer, the Australian diplomat, set up George Papadopoulos. All they did, they purchased the Steele dossier from foreign sources. All they did was work with foreign governments and sources and methods to investigate Trump. That's all they did. But Russia didn't invade Ukraine. They're doing this now under Biden's watch. Holy Angle, hello. Holly Angle, hello. Thank you, Holly. Thank you.
Is certain what he's going to do. My guess is he will move in. He has to do something. And by the way, I've indicated to him the 2 things he said to me that he wants guarantees on. One is Ukraine will never be part of NATO. And 2, that NATO or there will not be strategic weapons stationed in Ukraine. Well, we can work out something on the second piece, pretending what he does along the Russian line as well.
Do you think that any world leader looks at mashed potato brains and says, "Oh, he's leading. He's a leader. He's running the show"? Do you think they say this? Do you think you say this? Do you think Democrats say this? The most loyal Democrat knows that Biden is out to lunch most of the time, and that everyone from Jake Sullivan to Bumbling Blinken to Jerome Powell to everyone around him is running things. Not even the most loyal Democrat, not even the edgiest lefty that always votes Democrat, vote blue no matter who, not even the morally superior liberal Democrats who they don't care. Their entire lives revolve around opposing Trump. They don't care about anything else. They certainly don't care. Drew! Thank you, Drew! Thank you! Drew York, thank you. They don't care at all. They don't care at all. I mean, this is like, do you understand? We are experiencing a stock market crash. We are going to experience, the actual crash. I mean, it's happening like I predicted, but it's, you know what? JG. But it's like we're seeing something that I've never seen before, which is they looked at Trump and they said, "Oh my God, what a buffoon! Oh my God, look at his personality." It's so what media did and what morally superior Democrats did is they were the cool kids in class, they were the cool kids in school, and they tried to bully a person they considered a bully, and they went overboard. And it's now they're like their only thing in life that they focus on. And they were going to have a stock market crash, a recession, and terrible geopolitical catastrophes, all under Biden's watch, and inflation through the roof, and food and gas prices will increase. You think that because Powell will increase interest rates, he might even prolong the inevitable, which would actually hurt the markets even more. So, but let's continue.
The Russian border in the European area of Russia. On the first piece, we have a number of treaties internationally and in Europe that suggest that you get to choose who you want to be with. But the likelihood that Ukraine is going to join NATO in the near term is not very likely, based on much more work they have to do in terms of democracy and a few other things going on there.
In terms of 10% for the big man, those things.
And whether or not the major allies in the West would vote to bring Ukraine in right now. So there's room to work if he wants to do that. But I think as you...
He knows very well that Putin doesn't want to do any of that. He doesn't trust. NATO has expanded. This is 30 years after the Cold War has ended. NATO is expanding. Why? The question, this is a valid question. Why do we even have NATO? Every country there has its own military budget, its own armed forces and Navy and Air Force. And you saw the number of nuclear warheads. Setlick 3 Gaming! Thank you, Setlick 3 Gaming. Thank you. As always, thanks for the kind words, as always. And thank you for your support, Setlick 3 Gaming. Thank you. France, the UK, they have nuclear weapons. So what's the problem? Why do we need to send... What is so important about NATO in 2022? The Cold War ended 30 plus years ago. Why do we need NATO now? Why? So we can destroy countries inadvertently, like Libya? Why? What is the point? I want to know what the point is when every country in Europe has its own defense budget. And we already learned that a nuclear confrontation between the Soviets and the U.S. or Russia and the U.S. would end the world. They're so worried about climate change, and they don't care about nuclear climate change. There's a climate change called nuclear climate change, meaning like mutually assured destruction.
Usual, he's going to... Well, I probably shouldn't go any further, but...
You probably shouldn't go any further because you're making everything up, or you're just regurgitating nonsense. Nobody cares about one discussion you had with Putin where he was trying his best to, I don't know, He was trying his best to pretend that he respected you. I mean, the whole thing is nonsense. The whole thing is just absolute nonsense. And you have all of these people like this is happening during this is happening
I think it
during
hurt him badly.
Biden's administration. Now, if it happened during Trump's administration, all you would hear is oh my God, what do they have on Trump? He's a Putin puppet. These people pretend they're the Cold Warriors, and Taiwan is now at risk of invasion by China, and Ukraine is at risk of invasion, is going to get invaded by Russia. Then they pretend that they're morally superior with climate change, and they single-handedly caused fossil fuels to go to record highs. Then they care about wealth inequality, and people now are paying more for oil and gas than they ever were. Okay, so these are the people. These are the same people that like everything they touch, it's like the anti-Midas touch. Everything they touch turns to poop. Every single thing they touch. It's unbelievable. Janet! Thank you so very much. Janet McGuffey, thank you so very much. Janet, thanks for all your support always, Janet. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Well, money still has value. Janet, it's true. Janet McGuffey. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Janet. Janet, we have mashed potato brains protecting us. I feel good. I feel safe. I wouldn't trust this man to drive my car. I wouldn't trust this man to, like, operate power tools. What else? I don't know. Roosevelt Media, thank you. Roosevelt Media, greatly appreciate. I hope all is well. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to you, Janet. Thank you so very much. Odin, thank you again as well. Janet, Roosevelt, thank you so very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have this man protecting us. He's protecting us. Let's see what's going on with C-SPAN. All right, so they're only like, let's see what else. So let's listen to this again. And then you have, I love the muffled voices of, I love the Janet and Roosevelt and Odin, everybody here. I love the muffled voices of all the petrified reporters. This is like, this is probably the way media worked, like 70 years ago in the USSR. Mr. President, Mr. President, you were talking about your thing with your Putin, and I just want to say, I'm sorry, you're doing the best job you can, but Putin, instead of using Ukraine, but what are you going to, and what are you thinking of? And thank you, Mr. President, and thank you. And we just want to get your thoughts on that Putin and Ukraine. And can you hear me now, Mr. President? Can you hear me now? Thank you. Putin and Ukraine. Putin and Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, with Trump, we were a little bit more disrespectful. That's all you hear. That's all you hear. I mean, you want to listen to the, it's like this part right here, you can't hear the man. You can't hear him. You can't hear him. Let's listen to this again.
Is that I think he still does not want any full-blown war, number one. Number two, do I think he'll test the West, test the United States and NATO as significantly as he can? Yes, I think he will.
Did you hear?
But I think he'll pay.
Did you hear they're eating lunch? They dropped like some, they dropped like a, a teacup or something. Listen to this.
Significantly as he can? Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price for it that he doesn't think now will cost him what it's going to cost him.
Oh, I'm sure he's really going to regret everything from, well, we're going to experience a stock market crash. We are already seeing a stock market crash. Everything is going to come tumbling down because mashed potato brains and Democrats push to end economic activity. Okay. Zogi 11, thank you. And, well, that, it's like, it's unbelievable too because, oh, I'll let him speak.
And I think he'll regret having done it. Now, whether or not, I think that, how can I say this in a public forum?
How can I say this in a public forum? Because I know so much. And, I know so much. Gosh, I'm just so salt of the earth. And I want to use profanity. But it's a public forum. Let me make up something. They wake me up at 1 in the afternoon for tea and crumpets and oatmeal. And then, come on, man. Come on, man. I'm busy, man. I got better things to do, man. 10% for the big man.
I think that he is dealing with what I believe he thinks is the most tragic thing that's happened to Mother Russia, in that the Berlin Wall came down, the empire has...
Yes, Putin is thinking of 30 years ago. That's his entire life. His entire life is thinking about 30 years ago. He doesn't think when they're amassing $500 billion in gold and oil prices are going up and gas prices are going up, which is making Russia a lot more money because the wonderful, morally superior climate change activists single-handedly caused oil, gas, and coal to be at record highs because they prevent investment, or they prevent companies from extracting, or Biden's policies, I should say, prevented oil and gas companies, unlike Trump. So, yeah, I'm sure I'm sure Putin is just, you know what? I'm sure Putin doesn't know what he's doing. I'm sure he does. This is a man, you understand, they play chess. Biden plays he doesn't even play Monopoly. I don't even know what he plays. Maybe, I don't know, what does Biden play? They play chess. Russians play chess. They're chess masters. Okay? We twiddle our thumbs and throw things at the television screen because Orange Man is on and we're so upset. Okay, Taiwan, God bless the people of Taiwan, God bless the people of Ukraine. I mean, this is all happening under mashed potato brains, but okay, let's continue.
Lost, the near abroad is gone, etc. The Soviet Union has been split. But think about what he has. He has 8 time zones, a burning tundra that will not freeze again naturally, a situation where he has a lot of oil and gas, but he is trying to find his place in the world between China and the West. And so
he plays Go Fish. You know what? Putin's playing poker, and Biden is playing bingo. I got bingo.
I'm not so sure that he has David, I'm not so sure he has is certain what he's going to do. My guess is he will move in.
He's not. So Biden says he's not sure Putin knows what he's going to do. Something tells me that Putin knows what he's going to do. Something tells me.
He has to do something. And by the way, I've indicated to him the two things.
Yes, tell us the wonderful, tell us the wonderful negotiation. Trump was a good negotiator. He's a very good negotiator. He negotiated the Doha Agreement. He negotiated the Abraham Accords. He was the first president to step foot in North Korea, to begin a true détente between North and South Korea. I mean, there were a lot of things that, like, okay, was he perfect, President Trump? No. Biden is far more imperfect.
Things he said to me that he wants guarantees on. One is Ukraine will never be part of NATO.
Oh, and then he says, oh, it's a minor incursion. And then President Zelensky said, what are you talking about? A minor incursion is actually called an invasion. Okay? But again, it's like they live in their own fantasy world. And it's going to come crashing down probably this week.
And
economically with the stock market crash.
Two, that NATO there will not be strategic weapons stationed in
that's Bill Clinton.
Ukraine. Well, we can work out something on the second piece, pretending what he does along the Russian line as well, the Russian border in the European area of Russia. On the first piece, we have a number of treaties internationally and in Europe that suggest that
let's look at this here. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why? What am I doing? No!
A little bit of time.
You bills as being bulk-on or
Look at the docile, like, respectful comments. Oh my God. Mr. President. Mr. President. Putin, Ukraine. I'm sorry. J-Spot! No, I don't believe they had any. I don't believe they had any. All right, so here.
You said that you have assessed.
Okay, so here. This is good. This is good. All right.
You feel as though he will move in. Has this administration, have you determined whether President Putin plans to invade or move into Ukraine, as you said?
Look, the only thing I'm confident of is that decision is totally, solely, completely a Putin decision.
Did you hear what he just said? Did you hear what this man just said, which is pretty much meaningless? It's like unbelievable. It's like unbelievable. Did you hear what this man just said? It's up to him.
It seemed like you said that you have assessed, you feel as though he will move in. Has this administration, have you determined whether President Putin plans to invade or move into Ukraine, as you said?
Look, the only thing I'm confident of
The only thing I'm confident of
is that decision is totally,
is that decision is
solely,
solely,
completely Putin
completely
decision.
a Putin decision. It's not my decision. It's not your decision. It's not our decision. It's not his decision. It's not her decision. It's not their decision. It's not anyone else's decision. No, no. It's Putin's decision. Of course, he's deciding while I'm in office, and this didn't happen when Trump was in office, but again, let's not split hairs here.
Nobody else is going to make that decision. No one else is going to impact that decision.
No one else gonna make that decision. You can try to make that decision. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work if you make that decision. Only Putin can make that decision. I'm trying to waste enough time here so I can go home and watch the football game and eat my oatmeal. Well, it's not my decision, and it's not your decision.
He's making that decision. And I suspect it matters which side of the bed he gets up on in the morning.
Ah, yeah. You sometimes have nightmares, whatever. You know, I eat chili beans in the middle of the night. I wake up, I have, I have to do the deed, and it smells up. Everyone's upset. Smells up the whole bed. A Dutch oven. It's horrible. And so maybe he woke up in a bad mood.
As to exactly what he's going to do. And I think it is not irrational, if he wanted to talk about dealing with strategic doctrine and dealing with force structures in Europe and in the European parts of Russia. But I don't know whether he's decided he wants to do that or not. So far, in the 3 meetings we've had, OSCE and anyway, have not produced anything, because the impression I get from my Secretary of State, my National Security Advisor,
My Secretary of State, National Security Advisor,
and my other senior officials that are doing these meetings,
those senior officials, very smart. They're very smart people. Yes, they're so smart. You should see how smart and intelligent they are. And that's why Putin is invading, because they're so smart.
is that there's a question of whether the people they're talking to know what he is going to do. So
Nobody really knows anything. And there's a question as to what they're going to do, and my smart people, and look how everything's fine, a lot of good, smart people.
the answer is, but based on a number of criteria as to what he could do. For example, for him to move in and occupy the whole country, particularly from the north, from Belarus, he's going to have to wait a little bit till the ground's frozen so he can cross. To move in a direction where he wants to talk about what's going. We're continuing to provide for defense capacities to the Ukrainians. We're talking about what's going.
We're saying it's a minor incursion's all good. No problem with minor incursion. It's not an invasion after all.
Going on in both the Baltic and the Black Sea, etc. There's a whole range of things that I'm sure he's trying to calculate how quickly he can do what he wants to do and what does he want to do. But he's not. He's an informed individual, and I'm not sure. I believe he's calculating what the immediate, short term, and the near-term and the long-term consequences of Russia will be.
He's talking about the short term, the near term, long term, immediate term, somewhat long, but somewhat also short term, intermediate, long, medium size, extra small term, and extra large term consequences. And Trump never talked like this. You could see I'm a lot smarter than Trump, and you can see that everyone around me is smarter than Trump. So basically, he said nothing. They're very good at saying nothing. Yes. Putin is going to weigh the options, or they already thought about this probably a year ahead, probably 2 years ahead. They already know what they're doing. So they already know what they're doing. They already know what they're doing. Let's see here. It's like there's zero. He has
Frank
no plan.
discussions.
He has no plan at all. He doesn't have anything that happens. They have no plan. Anything that happens, it will be media propping up, covering for Biden and Democrats. They have absolutely no plan at all. They don't know what they're doing. They are always caught off guard, or they're always ignoring major problems. They want to evolve from fossil fuels to renewables tomorrow, which is tanking the economy. We have record highs in oil, gas, and coal and fossil fuels, so it's the exact opposite of what the climate change activists want. We have Taiwan and China and Ukraine and Russia. These are all geopolitical nightmares. Okay, none of these problems were as bad under Trump, or none of these problems were there under Trump. This is what happens when you tank the U.S. economy and you say, well, it's all for your own good. These are the same people, by the way, who talk about the collective. The collective. Oh, we have to do everything for the collective. Well, you're literally running the country into the ground. So I guess what you want is for the collective to suffer. Herschel Ballard, thank you. Herschel Ballard, thank you so very, very much. Thank you. Thank you, Herschel. As always, it's unbelievable. Thank you, Herschel. Greatly appreciate it. I really appreciate your support. Thank you, Herschel.
Vladimir Putin and I. And the idea that NATO is not going to be united, I don't buy. I've spoken to every major NATO leader. We've had the NATO-Russian summit.
Really? Let's see. German Chancellor turned down Biden. This is hilarious. Okay. The German Chancellor turned down Biden's invite to discuss Ukraine crisis. Okay. So they get 30 to 40% of their oil and natural gas from Russia. You think that Putin knows exactly what he's doing? I think he does. Something tells me he does. Or at least they're going to address their national security concerns. Okay? I don't want Russia to invade Ukraine. I don't want that. I do not want that at all. But under mashed potato brains, anything's possible. And we're seeing it. It's all happening.
We've had the OSCE has met, etc. And so I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do.
It's one thing if it's a minor incursion. I mean, what's the matter with an incursion? Media's not going to blame me. An incursion? Oh, so they invade, but it's a small invasion. So what? So what if it's a small invasion? in public relations terms, that's just fine for me. What do I care? Okay, then it'll make Putin a bad guy. Okay, make me a good guy. Okay? Come on, man. Come on. A small incursion. What's the problem with a small incursion? Even though it's an insult to President Zelensky of Ukraine. A small incursion is okay. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Putin. Huh? If you're hearing me, Putin, small invasion, incursion, it's no problem at all. It's not a problem. What's the problem with a small incursion?
If it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
A minor incursion is no problem. Because, in public relations, morally superior liberal speak, which is what's tanking the entire United States economy, and it's just an incursion, like a little paper cut. It's like an incursion of a paper cut.
But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine.
It's going to be a disaster for the world and a disaster for our economy, which is already in the tank. Jeremy Grantham says that the S&P is going to go down to 2,500. I've been saying to the world every day that the Dow is going to get to 20,000 and Bitcoin's going to get to 10,000. Inflation is probably going to get to well over. Inflation will hit 15%. They'll probably, with their calculations, the government calculations, inflation will hit 15%, which will then really mean that it's like 30%, which would then be really, 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 or 20 plus per 18 or 20 plus percent, really bad. 1970s all over again. This man makes Jimmy Carter look good. I'm Jimmy Carter. I had sensual thoughts of tubining. Oh my goodness. I have had sinful thoughts. I'm Jimmy Carter. Well, one thing I do know is that Putin installed Trump. I'm a good liberal, and I worship the intelligence services.
Ukraine, and that our allies and partners are ready to impose severe cost and significant harm on Russia and the Russian economy. I think
You're not going to impose any harm on them. They have nuclear weapons, and they provide Europe with 30 to 40% of oil and gas. You're not going to impose any harm on them. They don't care. They don't care what you do, because there's not much we can do. Europe doesn't want them. Excuse me. Europe doesn't want them to cut the supply of oil and gas. European countries will go bankrupt if they have to spend more than 5 times the cost for natural gas. Natural gas is 5 times as expensive in Europe. Oil is extremely expensive in Europe. Nico, hello, Nico. Thank you for watching. To my Paul Bartlett, to my Australian viewers, thank you so very much.
Still does not want any full-blown war, number one. Number two, do I think he'll test the West, test the United States?
So we heard that, but listen to this. Listen to this first part again.
We've had very frank discussions.
We've had very frank discussions. And, one thing, when Putin is frank and honest, I can see, we had frank discussions, very frank.
Vladimir Putin and I. And the idea that NATO is not going to be united, I don't buy.
I just don't buy that. And just because the German chancellor didn't dissed me, major dissed me so hard, I wanted to meet up and to talk on the phone. He couldn't even talk on the phone. She was busy. Who knows what he was probably drinking beer, and who knows what he was doing. The Germans, and so the NATO is just fine. Everything's great. They're petrified that Russia will not give them oil and gas.
I've spoken to every major NATO leader. We've had the NATO-Russian summit. We've had the OSCE has met, et cetera. And so I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor.
Listen to this. This is another diplomatic catastrophe from Biden.
Depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do.
And so then what he's going to do, Putin, he's like, you know what? Maybe we'll just do a minor incursion. Wait until the stock market gets to 20,000 and then completely invade. Well, you know what? We'll invade first with a minor incursion. Then we'll wait for everything to tank and collapse economically because Democrats pushed to end economic activity 2 years ago. Look, when the market completely crashes, we've seen the beginning of it. It will be because of Democrats calling to end the U.S. economy 2 years ago.
Et cetera. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine, and that our allies and partners are ready to impose severe cost and significant harm on Russia and the Russian economy. I think he still does not want any full-blown war, number one. Number two.
Nico Hammer, thank you so very much. Greatly appreciated. Nico Hammer, thank you so much. Thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thank you so very, very much. I hope all is well, and thank you for always watching. Happy New Year to you. David, thank you. Thank you so much. Nico, thanks so much again. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Nico. Nico Hammer, thank you.
Do I think he'll test the West, test the United States and NATO as significantly as he can? Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price for it that he doesn't think now.
He's not going to pay any price. He has oil and gas, 30 to 40% of oil and gas. Here. Has Europe become so dependent? Has Europe become how Europe has become so dependent on Putin for gas? Okay? It's right here. I mean, there are a million articles. So, I mean, it's not even like Europe is now a hostage to Russia over energy. I mean, it's right there. The U.S. was right. No, Trump was right. Nico Hammer, thank you so much. Nico, thank you, sir. Thank you so very, very much. Australia is suffering a lot right now. We are under siege by our government. God bless you, Nico. All I can say is God bless you. And half of the United States, I wish all the United States, but half of the United States stands with you and is concerned for you as I am. And God bless the people of Australia. It's unbelievable. It's nightmarish and it's dystopian. And God bless you, Nico. It's like Australia and Canada are where the U.S. That's the utopian. There's the utopian worlds for morally superior liberals in the U.S. But half of our country knows and stands firmly with you and wants you to return to normal, and the other half enjoys anything that happens that isn't Trump. Anything. Nico, ICBMs, tsunamis, anything, as long as it's not Trump. Ray Hawk, thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Nico, thank you so very much. God bless you. God bless you, Nico. And God bless Australia. People will, you know what? you have to wait. Hopefully, I would say the next generation of Americans, Australians, Canadians, Europeans will learn from this madness. So, the next generation of Australians will look at this and say, okay, we're not going to make the mistakes of years past. I think that we live in a time where the most apoplectic and hysterical get to push policies upon everyone, with media support, by the way. Your media is the same as our media. God bless you, and God bless the people of Australia. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this because I don't want people to lose money, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The only thing that will pull Australia and Canada and the US up from this nightmarish, dystopian nightmare is the devastating stock market crash that's going to happen. I don't want that to happen, but Democratic policies, liberal policies everywhere have tanked not only the US economy, it's going to tank the world economy. You can't pump trillions of dollars. You can't pump trillions of dollars into economies and not have them with inflation. I mean, not have countries around the world deal with inflation. Nico Hammer, thank you so very much, as always, for your support. Greatly appreciated. God bless you and God bless the people of Australia. Half of this country, Nico, half of the United States, stands firmly and supports 100%. I'll just say the most logical and rational people in Australia, which is very likely most of the country. Although then you see polls show that Australians agree. It's like, I don't know about those polls. The polls are like, majority of Australians agree. And it's like 40% disagree. With 60% agree. I'm like, well, you know what? That 40%, if you had media that just reported the news and didn't sensationalize, that 40 would turn to 70. But anyway, Nico, thank you so very much. Thank you.
And then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc. But if they on what it does, it's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc. But if they,
it's one thing if it's a minor incursion. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion. What does that mean? What does that mean? So, it's like, what does that mean, minor incursion? So there you go. Let's see if Jake Sullivan has Blinken. Let's see if Blinken has a speech. I want to hear bumbling Blinken. Come on, bumbling Blinken. Come on, Blinken. Oh, Lord. Serious? Oh, here.
Of the vibrant and bigger.
Tell me he doesn't look like a deer in the headlights. Tell me this man doesn't look like a deer in the headlights. Oh, Wayne, hello.
than Russia and NATO. It's a stake in defending a defensive voluntary alliance that protects nearly 1 billion people across Europe and North America.
What? How does NATO protect 1 billion people? It doesn't protect 1 billion people at all. NATO does not protect 1 billion people at all. NATO was created to counter the USSR, and then the Warsaw Pact was created.
And at the governing principles of international peace and security.
That's why you destroyed Libya.
That we all have a stake in defending.
Look at the massive crowd of support. Oh, that's right. You could call up more people for a barbecue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Ah, you have enough for a minion. He's speaking to, how many people is he speaking to?
Those principles, established in the wake of 2 world wars and a Cold War, reject the right of one country to change the borders of another by force.
I'm Bob Blinken, and I am about public relations. Look at my suit. Look how nice it is. The blue tie does not go. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me in the chat if I'm wrong. It's a dark blue, almost purple tie. Doesn't go with the suit. Again, it doesn't matter because no one is going to tell him otherwise. Actually, the people under him are probably petrified. All of humanity is saying this man is a bumbling Blinken. Let's continue.
To dictate to another the policies it pursues or the choices it makes, including with whom to associate.
We definitely have not done that for 50, 60, 70 years.
Or to exert a sphere of influence that would subjugate sovereign neighbors to its will.
We definitely have not done that either. Although, of course, we have.
To allow Russia to violate those principles with impunity would drag us all back to a much more dangerous and unstable time.
This is why we're sending soldiers to Eastern Europe to just basically as a show of public relations force, and they have more nuclear weapons than we do, and we shouldn't be burdening our soldiers. But you know what? I think that's the best thing to do because after the Doha Agreement was completely botched by me and the President Mashed Potato Brains, we don't see an end in sight to our incompetence and maniacal behavior. We're waiting for the stock market to crash and inflation to be at 30%, and then we can truly experience happiness because Trump won't be tweeting.
When this continent and this city were divided in 2, separated by no man's lands, patrolled by soldiers with the threat of all-out war hanging over everyone's heads. It would also send a message to others around the world that these principles are expendable, and that, too, would have catastrophic results. That's why the United States and our allies and partners in Europe have been so focused on what's happening in Ukraine.
That's why we've done nothing, because Europe can't do anything. They get 40% of their oil and gas from Russia. And they've tried renewable energies, and it's only made them pay more for gas and heating their homes. But let's continue.
It's bigger than a conflict between 2 countries. It's bigger than Russia and NATO. It's a crisis with global consequences. And it requires global attention and action. Russia's efforts to turn its neighbors into puppet states, to control their activities, to crack down on any spark of democratic expression.
This is a picture of half of the United States of America right now. Very happy that Trump is not in office and not caring at all when the stock market crashes and we have a recession and Russia invades Ukraine and China invades Taiwan and the sky falls. At the end of the day, this half of the country is very happy.
Will intensify. Once the principles of sovereignty and self-determination are thrown out, you revert to a world in which the rules we've shaped together over decades erode and then vanish. And that emboldens some governments to do whatever it takes to get whatever they want, even if that means shutting down another country's internet, cutting off heating oil in the dead of winter, or sending in tanks, all tactics Russia has used against other countries in recent years.
Why is this happening now? I thought that I thought that I thought that I thought I thought Trump was the Putin puppet. I thought Trump was a Putin puppet. Wasn't Trump the Putin puppet? Wasn't Trump the man who was installed by the Kremlin? Why are we dealing with this now? Weren't they supposed to be so afraid of mashed potato brains? I thought they were supposed to be so afraid. They were supposed to fear Democrats because Democrats had the Lincoln Project next, and you know.
That's why governments and citizens everywhere should care about what's happening in Ukraine. It may seem like a distant regional dispute or yet another example of Russian bullying, but at stake again are principles that have made the world safer and more stable for decades. Now, alternatively, Russia says the problem is NATO. On its face, that's absurd.
Why would that be absurd? You wouldn't want Mexico or Canada joining the Warsaw Pact or joining any alliance run by China or Russia.
NATO didn't invade Georgia. NATO didn't invade Ukraine.
NATO isn't bordering. Well, yeah, NATO isn't bordering Georgia or Ukraine, so that's why. NATO destroyed Libya. So
NATO is a defensive alliance.
Not anymore.
With no aggressive intent toward Russia. To the contrary.
No aggressive intent towards Russia. You should really trust us. We would never. NATO was, actually formed during the Cold War, but we wouldn't do anything bad. I mean, why don't you trust us? We've encircled you and have most of Europe now, or a good part of Europe, even though we promised at the end of the Cold War not to do that. So there you go.
Efforts by NATO to engage Russia have gone on for years, and unfortunately,
Angela Goodwin, thank you. This administration is so inept, Mr. Angela Goodwin, thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Angela Goodwin, thank you as always. I hope all is well. Happy New Year.
Been rejected. For example, in the NATO-Russia Founding Act, which was intended to build trust and increase consultations and cooperation, NATO pledged to significantly reduce its military strength in Eastern Europe. And it's done just that. Russia pledged to exercise similar restraint in its conventional force deployments in Europe. Again, instead, it invaded two countries. Russia says that
one under President Obama and now one under Biden. Do you see maybe a pattern here?
NATO is encircling Russia. In fact, only 6% of Russia's borders touch NATO countries.
Only 6%. They love if they're not messing with data and numbers, and only 6%. We wouldn't allow half of a percent to touch our country at all. We wouldn't allow any of that.
Compare that to Ukraine, which is now genuinely being encircled by Russian troops. In the Baltic countries and Poland, there are around 5,000 NATO troops who aren't from those countries, and their presence is rotational, not permanent. Russia has put at least 20 times as many.
Their presence is rotational? What does it matter? What do you think Putin cares? He's like, oh, rotational, okay.
On Ukraine's borders. President Putin says that NATO is, and I quote, parking missiles on the porch of our house. But it's Russia that has developed ground-launched intermediate-range missiles that can reach Germany and nearly all NATO European territory, despite Russia being a party to the INF Treaty that prohibited these missiles. In fact, Russia's violation led to the termination of that treaty, which has left us all less safe. It's also worth noting that though Russia is not a member of NATO, it, like many non-NATO countries, has actually benefited from the peace, stability, and prosperity that NATO has helped make possible.
Don't you understand? They're so delusional. No wonder the whole planet's descending into chaos. Bumbling Blinken is like, don't you like Putin actually he's benefiting. He's benefiting from NATO. It's actually a fantastic thing. Putin is benefiting from NATO. Don't you see? Don't you see? He's benefiting. He's actually benefiting from NATO. Isn't that interesting? Don't you see that? I mean, this is unbelievable.
Possible. Many of us remember vividly the tensions and fears of the Cold War era. The steps that the Soviet Union and the West took toward each other over those years to build understanding and establish agreed-upon rules for how our countries would act were welcomed by people everywhere because they turned down the heat and made military conflict less likely.
We almost obliterated the planet with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Those breakthroughs are the result of a great deal of hard work by people on all sides.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. I think I'm going to head on out right now. This is really, this is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because, you have a situation where there's just no strategic thinking at all. There's no thinking at all. There's just no plan. There's no thinking. There's no nothing. And now, we'll see what happens this week. I don't think it's going to be good. Stock market crash, everything else, Give me your thoughts below. JG, thank you. Everybody here, Eric H526, Luke St. Martin, thank you. Thanks, everybody. God bless. To my super chat, Nico, everybody here, thank you so very much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. I'll be back, and subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I'll be back